when we circulate it if you have other members who you think might be interested in it. If you're watching this and you have a family member in a long-term care home not operated by Grey County, please do contact that home if you have any questions or concerns about their care. So just quickly before we go, I will just go over the format. As usual, we will have a presentation from Jennifer tonight. She's going to go over just the main information that we think we need to get across for the Behavioral Support Transition Unit. And once we get through the presentation portion, we will open up the floor to questions. I think we'll let Jennifer get through her piece before we do open up the Q&A. And I would ask that you use the Q&A feature built right into Zoom to enter your questions, because that does help us track them to make sure we don't miss anything. After the call, if you happen to think of something that that didn't come up, you can always email communications@grey.ca or reply to one of our newsletters. Those emails will come to me and we'll make sure that someone is able to respond to you in a timely fashion. So with that, Jennifer, I guess I will pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, Rob, and good evening, everyone. So yes, I'll just jump right in. We shared a letter, Shannon shared out a letter via the email MailChimp on March 30th to let everybody know that Grey Gables had been awarded and approved a 2-year pilot project for a 20-bed behavioral support transition unit. And we are going to, and we shared that we were going to have this meeting to give an update. This has been a project that has been in the works of proposals since about 2014. So it's been talked about for a long time, and here we are. So I do have a presentation that I'm going to share. So I'll just take us through some information, and Shannon has an update, and then we can do some questions and answers. So let's just see if I can pull this up. I need to swap. Okay, Shannon, can you see the slide? Can you give me a thumbs up? Okay, great. So let's start by just talking about what are responsive behaviors. Responsive behaviors is a term that is often preferred by people with dementia, mental health, substance use, and/or other neurological disorders to describe how their actions, words, and gestures are a response to something important in their personal, social, or physical environment. So examples of a responsive behavior might be wandering, physical or verbal aggression, resistance to care, that type of thing. And it's often triggered by something that's in the environment, which explains why it's a response. It's a response to something that is happening, that the changes in their brain from either the dementia, often it's dementia, mental health, or other neurological disorders, changes the way that they respond to whatever is happening around them. So let's talk a little bit about Grey Gables. The original proposal back in 2014 was looking at the Manor as a site for the Behavioral Support Transition Unit. But as we worked our way through the proposal and in partnership with the Southwest LHIN and the Ministry of Long-Term Care, we shifted our focus to Grey Gables. And there's a few reasons, so we'll just go through them. The BSTU is a 20-bed service dedicated to serving this very unique population. Part of what is really beneficial about Grey Gables is the layout and the space. The environmental layout really serves well the needs of 20 residents with special behaviors, the space for enhanced staffing, and really that secure, separate, dedicated space. So it's a 2-year pilot, and the hope is that it will be a proof of concept for a rural center of excellence in behavioral care. And there are a handful of behavioral specialized units in Ontario, but most of them are in urban centers. And so this is really unique in that it's supporting this rural population. So as I said, after we reviewed Grey Gables, and we really felt it was the best suited home to create the BSTU and have minimal disruption to the overall operation of the home or the home area. And there was really some, lots of thought and focus on what is best to have a shared unit where there's residents that are traditional long-term care residents living at the same time with residents in the specialized unit. And that really wasn't, we didn't really feel that was best practice or leading practice. And so that's how we ended up looking at Lee Manor as an opportunity. And so what is this program going to offer? It's really the opportunity to optimize the quality of life for a portion of residents, people living with responsive behaviors. So as family members of long-term care residents, it won't be surprising to you to know that the number of residents moving in to long-term care with dementia and responsive behaviors is increasing. And for many times, long-term care homes are able to appropriately and safely support the needs of that resident with dementia and manage and support their responsive behaviors. But there are situations where residents need enhanced support and need some additional resources and care planning to support that person to be able to transition back into a traditional long-term care home. And we don't do this alone. We do this in partnership with services and resources around the community and in the hospital and other long-term care homes. And we do this with our partnerships and integrated services. So in the Southwest LHIN, there is embedded behavioral support resources. You may or may not know that there's a team dedicated at Grey Gables that are specially trained to support the spread of knowledge and skills about responsive behaviors so that all of our staff have the tools and resources they need to support residents. And so that team is going to be integral in building the training and the support for this special unit. It is fully funded by the LHIN and the Ministry of Long-Term Care. It will be established on the Maple Lane home area, and it will be a separate and secure unit. This does mean that the residents that are currently living on Maple Lane will need to transition to either Valley View or Pine Ridge. And so I'm assuming that there will be some questions about that. And we do want to, every effort will be made to have like accommodations. So if someone's living in a private room, they would move to a private room in either Valley View or Pine Ridge. And this isn't going to be something that happens overnight. It's as rooms become available on Valley and Pine, then there'll be a discussion with the residents that need to be transitioned from Maple to sort out what's the best fit, how do we do that transition, and how do we make that as smooth as possible. During the so there will be a transition period where residents are the current residents that are traditional long-term care residents, and we will be moving in residents that meet that criteria for the special BSTU unit. We will not have traditional residents sharing a room with a new BSTU resident. However, they may be sharing the space during the home area during the transition. We won't move any residents into the BSTU until we have the enhanced staffing recruited and trained. So there will be a period of time where there is the enhanced staff, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, and the traditional residents and 1 or 2 and 3, the behavioral supports residents. And we'll have check-in discussions as we go, because the safety and well-being of all of our residents continues to be a priority. Best practice guidelines. So there, as I said, there are a handful of BSO and behavioral support units and transition units across Ontario. And we are part of a collaborative group that shares leading practice, best practice guidelines, resources, education, that type of resources. We also locally have partners that provide us support. So the Alzheimer's Society, BSO Ontario, there's a mobile behavioral supports team out of Behaviours Health Services, and all of those team members and stakeholders will help support us in ensuring that we have best practice guidelines, leading practice, the right education, the tools and the resources. Whoops. And so enhanced staffing, I've said a couple of times that it's enhanced staffing. So there will be the current staffing complement that is already on Maple Lane. And then there will be additional staff recruited. Really, it's something that's really unique and a really excellent opportunity for this pilot project is built into the proposal. We proposed a behavioral supports transition unit, implementation and best practice coordinator. And it's a 12-month contract. And this individual, this role will help support the coordination of all those stakeholders that we talked about and support the implementation of the unit. And then as the unit gets up and running, the best practice coordinator will gather data, analyze data, do the research and follow up on the quality. And at the end of the 12 months, produce best practice guidelines or leading guidelines to support long-term care homes across Ontario, but also with the focus of a rural model. And so it's really exciting to be a leading home, piloting something kind of new with the goal of changing the way long-term care provides care and support for residents with responsive behaviors. Another additional role is a unit coordinator, a resident care coordinator for just the 20-bed BSTU. And then as I mentioned, the original complement, so the current complement of staff will be enhanced with full-time RN, additional RPNs, additional PSWs, program and support staff, social work hours, physiotherapy, spiritual care. So it really is wrapping around the services that those 20 residents need to help stabilize their situation so that they can transition safely into their home of choice. And as always, our resident-centered focus is what guides all that we do across our care and service. And so we use our color at promise specifically in our goals of how does the BSTU support residents. And I believe that Shannon shared that in the letter. And so we can talk about that a little bit more if people have questions. And I'm going to hand it over to Shannon. And I'll have to see if I can figure out how to mute myself so that Shannon, while I've got all my screens up, but Shannon is going to give an update.
All right. Can you hear me okay first, Jen? Yeah, perfect. All right. Well, I just wanted to give everyone a little update on what we've been able to do so far since we've been aware that we have been awarded the BSTU. We've had some contractors in to do an assessment on resident space in Valley View that will be converted into a bedroom with a shared bath. This will support us in having 23 residents living both on Valley View and Pine Ridge, leaving 20 beds on Maple Lane. The same contractors will be giving us a quote on enhancing the memorial garden fencing to make that area more secure for residents without impeding on the view that they already have. IT has been working on pulling wiring for the extra cameras that will be installed in the courtyard that's outside of Maple Lane, as well as in some of the common areas within the area as well. Cell phones, computers, laptops, they've all been purchased. We've been able to purchase an activity board that is interactive and is hooked up to the internet, and also a music program for everyone to enjoy. We will continue to get feedback from our internal and local BSO team on items that the residents will be needed, or what we'll need for the residents in that area. Education resources have been purchased for the training of the staff that will be working on Maple Lane. And then some of our next steps are, we're looking at, as Jen has mentioned, we'll be hiring the best practice coordinator. And after that, we'll then be looking at recruiting the rest of the staff for that area. For training and education, this will be done prior to admitting any residents. We'll be using our local BSO partners to help with this training. Renovations will get underway as soon as we receive all the quotes and permits and stuff that we need for that. Internal moves will happen as rooms become available, but there will be lots of conversations that will happen around that with the residents as well as with the POAs before those moves start. And then for communication, once we've hired the best practice coordinator and that person is on board, I'm going to commit that we will have regular Zoom meetings like this to keep everybody up to date and make sure that everyone is involved in making this unit the way it's supposed to be. So for that, we welcome everyone's feedback and suggestions in all aspects. We want to be successful in implementing the BSTU unit, as well as keeping Grey Gables the same as it has been, and something that the community and the staff will be proud of. So Rob, I think Jen and I are now open for questions.
All right. Thank you very much. Olivia, do you want to just take it away? If anyone has questions, they can add them into the Q&A feature, and we will get to those as fast as we can. I don't see any in there at the moment.
Yes, at the moment, just to remind everyone, there are two different options. We have a chat feature and we have a Q&A feature. If you'd like to have questions answered, please use the Q&A.
While that's open, and see if anybody has any questions. Something that we have been talking about is ensuring that we have resident and family involvement and feedback as we work through this process. And I think there's a couple of options that we can look at. So, Grey Gables isn't a big home. So to create kind of an advisory table just for the BSTU is an option, whether or not there's people that are available and able to commit to that. The other option is to add members to the existing resident council and family council, specifically around the BSTU, and make sure that that's a standing agenda item at those councils. So we're interested in feedback from family members, and we'll be asking the residents as well to make sure that we're not doing just what we think is right, but what we're hearing from feedback. And it's important for us to know what, if you do have concerns or worries or wishes, for you to share that with us, because that'll help us make sure that we're looking at the right things. And when we hear what people's concerns are, it helps us also make sure we're communicating the right information. Are we giving you the things you need to know? So I'll leave it at that.
So Jen, we do have a question. I'll just read it word for word just to see. So Grey Gables will be focusing on dementia residents going forward, as we heard today. Besides the move of non-dementia residents out of Maple, what impact will this have on non-dementia residents?
That is a really great question, and thank you, Joanne, for asking that. I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but we are noticing an increase in residents moving in with dementia. So while this unit is specially focused for those residents that need a little bit of extra support to be able to transition into a traditional long-term care home, what we are going to be learning and from that experience is going to better support how we provide resident-centered care for all of our residents, whether they have dementia with responsive behaviors or not. It's the focus and the focus of and the philosophy of the training and the approach for specialized care is really about knowing and paying attention to the details of what matters to that resident in that moment, and giving the staff and the team members the tools that they need to be able to identify when to reapproach, how to do that, how to work with their team, just the different ways of approaching and looking at the resident in a different way to support what it is that they need in that moment. And so I really see this as an opportunity to benefit all residents. And I also want to just share that and I meant to pull it up so that I could have it specifically in front of me. The residents that are going to be moving into the BSTU are really not different than the residents that we have supported in the past, and have really brought in those extra supports from the BSO team, from the Behaviours Health Services, and special services from the Alzheimer's Society. But we knew that they needed more support than what we could sustain on a long-term basis. And when Greg Gables' team does an amazing job at supporting residents with responsive behaviors, stabilizing their behaviors, building care plans that meet that resident's needs, sharing that care plan so that all the team members understand it. And really it's that on a little bit of a bigger focus. So it's a resident that might come to the BSTU might be someone that just isn't settling in well, that's really struggling in a traditional long-term care home. That home just doesn't have the resources to support the services that they need. So they move into the BSTU. The team, which has enhanced staff, wraps their care around that resident, helps to stabilize the situation, build a care plan, share that care plan back with the home that they're transitioning back to, because that's their home. And then they're able to transition out of the BSTU back to their first choice. So I don't know if that helped. That was a long answer for your question.
And that was wonderful. Thank you.
Looking to see if Joanne had a follow-up to that, but we'll maybe get to it.
Joanne has a few questions, and this will probably be helpful for many listeners. She's asking if the current residents with dementia in Valley View and Pine, will they be moving to Maple?
So that's also a good follow-up question. And so, and I'll pass it over to Shannon. Shannon and her team are doing that assessment to see if there are residents that are currently living on Maple Lane that would really benefit from that additional support of the BSTU. And I
think you answered you answered it, but that's correct. We are right now assessing all the residents in the whole home to see who would be a match to move into Maple, or from Maple who could move out easily enough. But yeah, we're in the process of doing that right now.
Thank you very much for answering that. That's wonderful. We have another one pertaining to a chance of being in the BSTU. The attendee explains that they have a family member with a few issues, one of them being dementia, being on a wait list for a while now. How do they know if they're the family member will be able to be in the BSTU? There's another part that says, and couldn't the resident be in this wing a length of time while waiting on a bed at the long-term care home?
Yeah, those are really good questions. And we have a regular meeting, weekly meeting with the LIN, which has the formerly known as the CCAC, the Home and Community Care Support Services, I think is the new name. And so we're meeting with those leaders to sort out and better understand so that we can communicate out what the eligibility looks like, the CCAC, so the Home and Community Support Services, will be the keepers of the wait list, and they will support getting people onto the wait list appropriately. One thing that we are also talking about is acknowledging that while this transition is happening, that will take some time. And what about the folks, the people that are on the wait list to move into a traditional bed? And so we are working with the LIN to come up with a bit of a rotating process. So every third or fourth move-in will be a traditional long-term care bed versus the BSTU. Because we do need to be admitting people when that time is right into the BSTU, but we want to make sure that we're having equitable access and not having people that are in the community or in the hospital waiting for a traditional bed. And if Grey Gables is their first choice, that could really extend their wait. So we're looking to find a way that is more equitable.
Can I add to that question or that answer as well? Just that second part of the question was about the residents transitioning into the other, and it sounded by the question that they was transitioning into Maple or into Pine or Valley, but it could be that they're transitioning to another home. So we're a transition unit, so they could transition to, yes, into Grey Gables, but also transition back into their own home, into another home, and we would supply or have the support for them to do that transition.
Yeah, thanks for that, Shannon. And the unit coordinator, the resident, we're going to come up with a better title than unit coordinator, but the BSTU resident care or care coordinator, that role will really be part of their focus will be supporting that process. So from move in to transition out. And I think what's really an amazing opportunity for these residents is that it isn't just, okay, we've got everything sorted out and here's the care plan and off you go to your home of choice. The BSTU team will meet with and work with the home that they're moving to and provide support and resources to make that a really smooth and successful transition. That's really what is the goal of helping support residents that are living with dementia with responsive behaviors, have a successful match and move to their home of choice and have that life worth living that colors it, that's resident-centered.
Thank you very much for that, Jen. We have another question pertaining to an announcement that happened recently, or they say it's a while ago, that Grey Gables was granted funding for an additional 60 some beds. Could you provide an update?
Yes, so that's true. And I forget when that was. Time is blurring. And so, yeah, so we are still working through the stages of the process for redevelopment. And we're in the early stages of working with a consultant to assess and provide some reports on what's possible for the campus, what that might look like, what would the existing Grey Gables become, what are the possibilities, and still working away at still at early stages, but planning to do that redevelopment of those additional beds so that the new build would be 128 bed long-term care home. What we don't know is how the BSTU fits into that exactly. And so it's a 2-year pilot. And as we get closer and more in the stages of design and development of the new build, we're hoping that there'll be more clarity on whether we're building a BSTU into those 128 beds or not. And I think that there's a way to do it that is flexible, that if in fact the pilot doesn't continue, then it can transition back to traditional long stay beds.
Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you very much for answering that. At the moment, our chat, our Q&A has no more questions in it. However, we can wait just a few moments to see if anyone else would like to add or type away. If there's anything else that Shannon or Jennifer wanted to add before that, we can let them explain. If not, we can wait just a moment, okay?
Sure, I don't know. There's a lot going on these days. So if you have any other questions that aren't BSTU, feel free to ask them. And I really appreciate you joining the call. And we really do want to be transparent and collaborative as we work through this process. And we appreciate that it seems like it's going very fast. That's what happens. Things take a while and then it's hurry up and then slow down. I think I did see one of the questions was around timing. So we are really hoping to have the best practice coordinator contract starting the beginning of May. And we're working internally with our human resources team to talk to our staff and our unions about how do we support the opportunities to work in a specialized unit. And we are already hearing from team members that they're really excited for this opportunity to be a part of something new and really exciting. And so I don't think we'll have any challenges there. There is some challenges with human resources, broadly. And so we will need to get going at doing some external recruitment. There will be lots of opportunities internally for anyone internal that wants to be a part of the special unit. And then lots of opportunities externally as well. So if you know anyone, pass them along to us.
Okay, so at the moment, we have no more questions. A reminder to anyone who is listening past this live recording session. If you do have any questions, please feel free to email communications@gray.ca. We will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And you can also make sure to respond to the long-term care newsletter that you are subscribed to and that you see. So just make sure that if you have any questions to follow up on this, please let us know, okay?
Great, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, Shannon, Rob, and Olivia. Really appreciate it. And have a really nice evening, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a great evening.